Great Wednesday, and welcome to the Healing America's Narratives podcast. I'm your host, King. I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. How you doing today, Reggie?
Doing well, King. Good to be with you as always on a Wednesday morning in the middle of the winter.
Great to be with you as well. And what's your spiritual energy number today?
I'm at a 10. If we had met 2 days ago, I would have had to choose that. But this morning, I woke up, got to work, and things are good. So I have a lot of good energy coming into the day.
I join you as a 10. Like I said, I go through my gratitude list. I can feel nothing but a 10. And I'm definitely vibrating at a very high frequency. I feel my body's full of energy. I feel like every cell in my body is vibrating wellness. So I'm excited about our discussion today. And what's your gratitude for this moment, this morning?
Yeah, I'm grateful for heat. I'm in a space where when I got up this morning, it was minus 2 degrees outside. I think it's up to 11 above zero now. So it's good to have heat come on this morning. And as always, I have indoor plumbing. I have safe drinking water. I have food in the refrigerator. My basic needs are met. And that puts me ahead of 90 something percent of the people on the planet. Um, and I'm grateful for that. I have my books, I have my food, I have my indoor plumbing, and I have people that I care about and they care about me. So I'm ahead of the game.
There you go. Well, I would say that I am grateful for my life, my health, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, breathe, and have a sound mind. I'm grateful for the 24 hours to pursue my purpose in life. I'm grateful for the challenges in my life because I look at those as stepping stones to solutions that bring transformation. I'm also grateful for the people I have in my life as well who uplift me and allow me to continue to build deep, connecting relationships. And I want to add now, and that's been my focus this year, and going to now share it in a second. I don't have it up right now, but I'll share it a little later on as I reference it. Is the Map of Consciousness by David R. Hawkins, Dr. Hawkins. And according to this map, I want to consistently stay vibrating at the frequency of love, which is 500 hertz. And so that's my goal. That's where I want to stay vibrating at. And I develop tools and assessments and to keep me there. But I realized that in order for me to get there and increase my vibration frequency, it's going to come through acts of kindness. So that's the path and the journey I'm on. Is do daily acts of kindness to raise my frequency that I stay vibrating at the frequency of love, 500 hertz, according to Hawkins scale. So I'm thankful for that realization, that goal, and feeling that energy around that as well.
Beautiful.
So with that being said, our gratitude out of the way, our spiritual energy numbers both at a 10. We're vibrating high. So let's get into today's topic.
Yeah. I love the way you put it. Got our gratitude out of the way. Yeah, I got that out of the way. Just obviously I'm joking there. So yeah, so today, we could on a weekly basis recite a relentless listing of things that are going wrong, specifically in the United States, but around the world as well. And to your recommendation some weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, the idea of what we do towards the end of this podcast is, we mention what people possibly can do moving forward with their lives. So, rather than choose a particular thing to point to and critique, and again, there are many that need to be critiqued because a lot of people are suffering at the hands of an out of control American federal government right now. I want to go to Carol Gilligan's work. She's somebody that I mentioned in Healing America's Narratives in the book. She's a developmental psychologist. Her primary work early on was on women's voices as they were ignored or left out of the human story. Her most famous book, her early book, was called In a Different Voice, where she really looked at, through research, not just sitting home thinking of these things, but she did research with girls and boys and noticed the difference in how they processed the same events and the same issues, how they were in elementary school, middle school, and high school, how they were acculturated differently. And people interpreted her book as creating an us versus them, like women were better than men because men were the patriarchy, and men controlled all the civilizations, most of them, and definitely the American society. And that's not what she was saying. So in the 10th year anniversary of the book, she wrote a note to the readers saying that reading how you've received my work, I realized that I've lost my own voice. And then in 2003, she came out with a follow-up book, which is very thin. I mean, it's under 200 pages. And it's called In a Human Voice, in which she really gets specific about where the research is leading. And so the two things I want to mention, one is this idea of a human voice, and something that you talk about as well. You frequently mention, your sense of identity, or anybody's sense of identity, where you don't deny the fact that you're a Black man, but that's not your primary identity. You primarily identify as a human being who aspires to be fully human. That's my language in terms of how I hear you. And so she speaks about a human voice, which we all have, and she speaks about how that has been negated, or at least, if not negated, minimized by, and here's the language she uses, the language of binary, of this and that, or this against that, or us versus them. The language of hierarchy, there's somebody here and there's somebody above them. And how, if you put those two things together, take a gender binary, male and female, and you put it into a hierarchy, and for the last at least 500 years, that's been primarily males over females. That's where you get patriarchy from. So just to identify the language again, take a gender binary, masculine and feminine. You take a hierarchy, putting men above women, and together that's where you get a patriarchy. And in her words, patriarchy is the opposite of democracy, because in democracy, every voice has to be equal. Every voice deserves to be heard. So what I'd like to get into today is what she speaks about in a human voice. She speaks about having a care ethics. In other words, an ethic that cares first, and takes care of other things later. Not an ethic that knows a lot, or an ethic that wants to dominate, or an ethic that wants to be right, but an ethic of caring. And she basically speaks about this human voice, when both the masculine and the feminine are allowed to be human. An ethic of care emerges. And just to go full circle with how I began, say what we're not going to talk too much about today, is if you listen to the rhetoric, or you read the rhetoric, mainly on social media, unfortunately, of the American federal government right now, whether it's the executive branch doing most of the damage, the legislative branch abdicating their responsibility to check the executive, and the judicial branch, which pretty much rubber stamps the executive, there is no evidence of care for others in there. There is not evidence of caring. And I think it's important for us to be able to use that kind of language as everyday human beings, and begin to explore, first of all, do I care? Second, what do I care about? And to what extent does my caring emerge out into all human beings or the whole planet. And it was, where do I focus my care? I think that's an essential element for a course correction, which we desperately need. And then the last thing, I'll just connect some dots. You and I speak a lot about me-centric, us-centric, all of us-centric, and all that is-centric worldviews. So the care ethic operates at the very least in a healthy us-centric view. I care about others within my group. Ideally, the care ethic operates beyond my group to all humans, and even better, to all living beings and the planet as a whole. I care about the whole shebang. I mean, that's the ideal, in my understanding, for being fully human. This caring about everyone and everything. That doesn't mean you have to try to take care of everyone, because you can't. I can't take care of somebody who's living in Moscow right now, or in Ukraine, or even in, where you are in Maryland. Can't do it. But to carry that ethic of care around with me on a daily basis is what we're talking about here.
All right. Well, again, Reggie, I want to thank you for choosing a timely topic. And it's really timely in context of the frequency I'm vibrating on. And it's definitely something that I'm clearing space in my mind and my life for this discussion and in this type of frequency. And again, I want to make sure I bring up Dave Hawkins' map of conscious, because I want to reference that. And I don't know how folks can see it on the screen. I know it's kind of little, but just quickly, I just want to point out some things about it so that folks can understand where I'm going with this. Now, David R. Hawkins is a doctor, a psychologist who came up with this map of consciousness. He's also written books, Force versus Power, and those things. So he's written a lot of extensively about where frequencies vibrate. And once you really understand, as Einstein teaches us, that energy is everything and everything is energy, when you really understand that and begin to realize that we vibrate at a certain frequency based on our thoughts, and our thoughts that we vibrate on, those frequencies determine where energy level we are at. And again, that can fluctuate throughout the day. So what I've learned for me and what my goal is relates to caring, is vibrating at the frequency of love, which is here on the Hawkins map of 500. And you see thoughts such as shame, guilt, apathy. That's shame is 20 hertz, guilt is 30 hertz, apathy is 50 hertz, grief is 75, fear is 100. So most people operate, that you meet on a regular basis, that you hope to meet at courage, which is 200 frequency. That means you have courage, you're doing things, you're making decisions, like you write in your book, The Healing's American Narratives, taking the courage to put that into play and spend that time and investment in doing that, to get your voice out there, knowing that you're going to create enemies from it. That's courage. And so for me, love is at the 500. So how do you get to love? Well, caring is a starting point. I looked at caring definitely about everybody outside your tribe, as you mentioned before. I also feel as though for me, that wasn't enough for me to operate in love. And again, anyone can say they operate in love, but to truly operate in love, you got to be living these principles and having these thoughts, which means you are doing what I consider acts of kindness to bring that energy and vibration of love on. And so doing so, that's my focus this year, is giving acts of kindness. Not nice. Now, separate nice from kind. I think a lot of people use those as synonyms. Nice means that you can just be so nice that you let people take advantage of you and things of that nature. And I'm not nice. I'm kind. Kind is giving an act of helping someone, working to solve someone's problem. My issue for me was I was wrapped up in my tribe, and I only wanted to give acts of kindness to people within my tribe. And I've learned that through my constant growth, that's bonded kindness is what I call it, where I only care about kindness of people in my tribe, and the rest of our people outside of my tribe previously to me having this epiphany and new direction, that wasn't my concern. But now that is my concern. Now, to your point, you can't help everybody. We know that. But what I realize is how can I grow exponentially my act of kindness? And that's by helping folks that are already doing kindness work and makes it easier for them to do their kindness work. And that amplifies my impact of my kindness. And so I say all that to say is I believe if people begin to start putting their thoughts to how can I serve more? How can I be more kind? Then that changes how you think. You don't longer focusing on the fear, the grief, the apathy, the guilt, and the shame, the lower vibration frequencies that the media wants us to vibrate at, because those are the frequencies that get us addicted to drugs, alcohol, puts in states of depression, which is going to lead to more addictive substances when we go to our doctors so they can prescribe more drugs and put us in that system when you're vibrating on those low things around fear. Because I don't believe you can watch the news and have a sound mind and just, if you're not doing anything to battle that or dissolve the impact of those messages coming into your brain, if you're taking that in full stint from whether it's MSNBC or CNN, whether it's left or it's right, if you're receiving that media image and news, the data into your body, and you don't have a way of dissolving that before it settles in, then you're going to vibrate at fear. You're going to be there coming in. If you're on the right side, well, we got immigrants coming to our country. We got folks stealing our jobs. We got people we got to deal with. So that fuels that hatred and that anger. So you can go out here and then the administration saying, well, let us deal with it. And that justifies the brutality and the violence of ICE. Then on the left side, you're looking at it and saying, well, here's what the administration is doing. They're dangerous. They're destroying democracy. They're violently killing people, locking people up at the very least, and so much injustice being done. So they put you in that fear level. And what I've learned, if you're vibrating at those lower frequency levels, you're not creative. You're not creating anything. You're just reacting and you're in survival mode. Even if you may be earning a financial living, but just your lifestyle is survival mode. You're just feeding off negative energy. You got to keep eating that because it becomes an addiction. Once you are in that space, then that's all you want. And I use my brother, for example, and talking to him, and my father was like this, and he's following right in my father's footsteps. My father, before he passed away in his late 60s, was constantly a negative person. And every time you talk to him, he would have nothing but negative things to say about the world, nothing that said negative things about his life. It was a constant victim mentality. I mean, I would joke, he never said this, but I would make the joke that you would say, well, Dad, today is Friday. Isn't that a good feeling? And he would say, well, Friday's only 2 days from Monday. So it's not a good thing. We're going to restart this thing over again. So he would find something negative in every situation because he's vibrating at that lower frequency. And I've also learned that when it comes to judging people, regardless of their racial construct, division that we live through, color of their skin, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, religion, etc., you can't change a person with your intent if they're vibrating at a lower frequency. That's just where they are. It's like a radio station. Again, for the folks who are older and listen to this podcast and can relate to the radio dial and the signal, when you had to, back in the days, you had to turn that dial and hear static until you finally tuned to a station that had a strong enough signal where you can pick it up. And then that's when you sell it on and say, okay, I can listen to this station. But without that tuning, you couldn't find that signal. And our bodies and our minds, more importantly, work as transmitters and receivers constantly. So we're constantly transmitting data and energy, and we're constantly receiving data and energy. And if you're not controlling that, then you're actually putting out that negative, and you're going to manifest and attract more negative. So that's a long story to go back to what you said originally about caring. I think it's very difficult, personally, now with all that stated, to care if you're vibrating at one of these low frequencies, because all it's going to tell you to do is only care about yourself first. Then if you do vibrate above fear and get to desire, anger, and pride is going to have you vibrating around your tribe. I only care about my people. So yes, I care about them, but I don't care about anyone outside of that. And so that's when you have to vibrate the courage, neutrality, and willingness which is the higher 300, 200, 300 level vibrations that get you outside of tribal thinking. So just wanted to start my first take on David Hawkins's map and how I see all those things gel and in line with each other.
Yeah, I'm glad you did that. Could you, in fact, King, put the map back up again? I want to refer to it in what I'm about to say. So, first thing, I probably should have asked you this in the chat before I say it out loud, but I'm pretty sure you can do this. Can you speak a little bit, because I know you have your engineering background. I have a superficial understanding of the frequency, what a hertz is. Can you speak a little bit to that? I mean, the different, what that frequency is referring to?
Yeah, so I'll give you again. I'm a person that believes that you have a default, which is accepted definition, and you have a definition you create that makes it applicable and understandable to you. Yeah. So I'll give you my definition of hertz. Hertz is megahertz, meaning that's the frequency rating for what and the vibration is looking at the signal, is looking at the actual range of the strength of the signal is measured in hertz, from being 0 to a higher hertz being a stronger signal. And so the higher the hertz is obviously a strong vibration, a strong connection. And going with David Hawkins, people such as Jesus, which is not on this map, doesn't have it listed examples of folks who vibrate certain frequencies. But people like Jesus and Buddha, he said, were vibrating at a calibration of 700 to 1,000 frequency. So that's with those individuals, if you believe in them, that's what they vibrate, their thoughts. That's what they're able to manifest, things they're able to manifest, whether it was Buddha, Allah, or any of the spiritual deities of any of the dogmas. But most of us, we're vibrating at a 200 frequency, which is about neutrality, that you like courage that you can meet from folks. And so I hope I answer your question, because that's just a measurement of the signal strength of how well the receivers connect with that actual vibration, and then measures it from anywhere from 0 to strong vibration, the strongest vibration being 1,000.
Yeah, great. Because I know that's used in the idea of measuring like how many megahertz. That's used in radio frequencies and a lot of other things prior to it being referring to us and how we humans vibrate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's why it's an excellent, once you understand everything is energy, that's why it becomes an excellent way to kind of value where we are energy wise as well.
Yeah. So great. So I just wanted to keep that up because I want to refer to it a little bit. So one of the things with any developmental model, because we've been using the shorthand for human development of me, us, all of us, all that is, and this is a development model in terms of vibration. One of the things that everybody has to be careful about once, if you decide you want to be working with development, is not to turn it into a competition. In other words, because then you'd be free. But basically, I want or need to be, and you didn't say this, so I'm not talking about you, but your goal is to raise your frequency, your vibration up to vibrating at the level of love and desire. And again, I'm not speaking about you when I say this. It's a vibrational frequency of 125, which can lead to craving, enslavement, at least a disappointment, and denying what's real. So it's important, I would say, with any developmental model, including this one, to really get honest with ourselves on a daily basis, on average. Where are we vibrating? Are we angry most of the time? Are we neutral most of the time? Are we courageous? Are we in a place of acceptance? So whatever it is, you pick one. Because only from an accurate assessment of where I really am can I begin to skillfully enact practices to increase my vibration. Would you agree with that so far? What I'm saying?
Absolutely. I think you're hitting the head. You're hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah. So I just wanted to use one specific example from my life in the last week or so. Before we got on, I was talking about For 3 out of the last 5 days, I had to move snow. I'm 5'6". I weigh $135. I rent a house that has a driveway that's 1.5 tenths of a mile, and I'm 71 years old. So my body doesn't enjoy moving snow as much as it. Not that I ever enjoyed moving snow, but I enjoy it less now. It used to be, shoveling was a great exercise because it was immediate gratification. Oh, there's 6 inches of snow. I can't see the sidewalk or the driveway or the stairs. Shovel, 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 shovel. Oh, I moved the snow. My work is done. Now we can walk there. So it's great. So I was having some pains, and I have some arthritis in my hands, some pains in my legs after doing all this work. And I realized what I was doing, and it's something that I've worked with for more than a decade now, is I was resisting what was true. I didn't want any more snow. I was resisting the weather. So good luck with that, because the weather's going to win. And then I was resisting the reality that my body didn't feel the way I wanted it to feel when I was done. I was sore. I was kind of tight and everything. And so what I had was nowhere near, I'm looking at acceptance, which is vibrating at 350 hertz. The guy was way down somewhere, I would guess, it's probably around, for temporarily, I was down around fear or desire. My desire was to be pain-free. My desire was to be snow-free. And it took me probably 2 or 3 days to recognize what I was doing. Forget the body pain, forget the snow out there, that I was resisting what was true. Okay, this hurts right now, and the snow is falling. And so it's really important to understand that we can find ourselves. Let's say I was operating from love on a daily basis. I don't think I was, but let's just say that, since that's the target we've been talking about. Or even I was operating from reason. All it took was physical pain and weather I didn't like to lower my vibrational frequency. So in other words, just because we do our work doesn't mean that stressful events can't bring us down. So it's an ongoing practice, an ongoing commitment to vibrate at healthier and healthier levels. So that's my understanding of this. I want to just check in with you, since you use this model. I'm familiar with it, but you use it more than I do. Does what I said resonate?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
And so much so, like I said, I really began to really indoctrinate this into my daily practice of looking at this chart and really memorizing and learning at least the different level names and the different calibrated frequency. Now, of course, I needed more to understand the view of life and the view on God and other columns associated with the calibrated frequency and the level name, such as pride, which is operating at 175. And then it says associated emotional stage, scorn. And then your resulting practice is inflation and demanding and indifferent. And that's 175. So the reason this is important in our discussion and in life in general is that, again, we are our thoughts. Our thoughts are who we are in the context that they govern our behaviors. But if your thoughts are these low frequency thoughts, people really need to understand, then you can't think about positive things when you have negative thoughts in your mind. It's like you can't smile and frown at the same time. You can try, but you won't be authentic with it. So understanding that if you have things happening in your life that are not welcoming to you, that's not wanted by you, that you're not happy with, the first thing that a person who's not a victim does is look at themselves and say, what can I do differently? What can I do to change what's happening in my life? Now, the victim would quickly say, well, it's happening to me because such and such is doing it to me. And whether it's a victim of pointing out to another tribe or another group of people that's different than you, saying it's their fault, or whatever that case may be. But what you don't really understand, what you're doing is you're vibrating a lower frequency, and that vibration is going to continue to attract more things into your life at that frequency. Your friends, your network, your community, they are going to be vibrating that frequency as well. And I'm saying that nothing comes from that, because even on Hawkins' scale, he has anything below 175 as being the destructive element that he's defining. He's saying that's force, when he talks about in his book Force and Force versus Weak. And he talks about that's force, and force is temporary. It consumes energy and it moves from location to location. So force is not something that we want. It's a weak energy source, and then it's like just pushing someone. It's force. It's not power. So that's destructive. You're going to be in a destructive state, and then more likely, if you haven't digressed to the point you're destructing property and other people, you're definitely destroying yourself through, like I said, the alcohol, the drugs, or whatever vice it may be. It may be you just promiscuous in your marriage. You got to go cheat and sleep with other women. And again, because you're destroying the foundation of your marriage. So you've been destructive in some form or fashion. And I think that's what a lot of people who are, as they call, forgetting the term on LinkedIn that we've seen here, trollers. When you troll people on LinkedIn or social media, that's a destructive mindset. You're in operating, and I guarantee you ask them their thoughts, they probably are operating below the 175 hertz if you listen to them. And definitely by the comments they write shows you that they're angry, they have fear, they have pride about their anger, they're standing 10 toes down in their anger and their pride, and eventually that's going to lead to shame. And see, I think a lot of people who operate at that shame guilt thought level 30 and 20, that's when, and again, this, I'm saying this for my personal analysis, not we need data to back it up. And unlike you, Reggie, I respect this about you. You're more of a critical thinker in the context that you believe that having documented data and giving the sources for your information. I'm more of a person that once I internalize it and it makes sense to me, I can talk about where I see it and my perspective on it more so than the data. Not saying you're wrong, but I just want to let people know how I process. So now with that being said, my perspective, if you at shame and a guilt level, that's what leads to suicide and or murder. So either you're going to murder yourself or you're going to murder someone else. And it shows here Hawkins what he's saying, the view on life is evil and vindictive. So you down there vibrating on guilt and shame, that's how people can kill themselves that we see. And they have all these financial resources. We're like, how can this person commit suicide when they have, it seems to us, the life they want? They're famous, they have financial resources, but yet and still they're vibrating at a guilt and shame level because something in their lives that they never really resolve, and those thoughts are beating them up until eventually it becomes so destructive they either kill themselves or they end up injuring someone else. And I think that's where we see the people who actually go into these schools and do shootings, because again, they're operating at that guilt and shame level, and that's the action and behaviors that it creates.
Yeah. No, I appreciate all of that. So just want to, let's leave this up here for now, and because I want to refer to it, and I don't have it indelibly etched in my mind as you do, so I have to see it. Getting back to Gilligan's idea of an ethic of care, and whereas the binary, the hierarchical gender binary, which is patriarchy, men above women, that requires either or, this versus that, us versus them. The ethic of care is such that, by definition, according to Hawkins' work, truly caring raises one's frequency. So anybody who has a pet at home, a dog, let's just say a dog or a cat or a rabbit or something you can pet, basically. I don't know if it works as well with a goldfish. It might, I just don't know. But in a moment when, let's say you're upset about something, you're angry about something, you're having, not that that's where you typically vibrate, but in a moment when something is off for you, if you go authentically and spend a few minutes with your dog or your cat and have physical contact, which the dog or cat tends to like, and is also, you'll find that it calms you as well. All right, that raises your frequency, at least temporarily. Take a human example. you're online at the checkout with some store, and something about the person, the cashier, either they're very talkative with all the customers, or they're just, maybe they're rude with the customers, and you finally get up there, you have a choice to make. All right. You can be upset because they were so talkative and delaying your day, or you can be upset because they were rude to the people in front of you, or you can just choose to care, recognize them as another human being, and just ask them how they're doing, or say thank you, even if you don't want to ask them how they're doing. Say thank you when they process your products and they accept your payment or whatever they do. Each one of those little choices like that impacts our frequency. Again, it doesn't move us, from desire to peace in a moment, but it impacts our frequency, right? And done as a practice, which is what you're talking about doing, which I really respect and appreciate. That's how we begin to vibrate at higher frequencies on a regular basis. So all of this, what we're speaking about here, this care ethic, this vibrating at a higher frequency approach, that's all of that is practice. It doesn't matter if your life is great or if your life is difficult. I mean, Viktor Frankl taught us that you can make choices in the concentration camp and he didn't say it this way, but he was talking about vibrating at a higher frequency, at choosing to love the other prisoners and even to love the guards rather than to live, only in shame or fear or anger. So, and then again, I want to say this because I think it's really important. All of this is easy to talk about when you're with one of your friends on a podcast on Wednesday morning, January 21st, 2026. It's harder in those moments when you're suffering, but that's when you really need it. So the practice is for the times when you're really suffering, because as I used to say to my basketball players at halftime, I won't say it exactly as I used to say it, but any fool can be positive at halftime and enthusiastic at halftime when you're up by 12 points or 15 points. What we want to be is those people who can still be enthusiastic and positive when we're down by 15, because we have to go out there and really play now. So that's what we practice for, to be able to move forward and vibrate at the higher frequency under adversity. So that's my taking what you're presenting here and destroying it for my own purposes, interpreting it in my own way.
Absolutely. And I definitely encourage people too, because I think if you try to interpret it exactly the way David Hawkins lays out, then it's going to be difficult for you to remember, difficult for you to understand, difficult for you to quote and source. But read it, listen to what he's saying, and just get the fact that we're all energy. That energy has a vibrational level. And Hawkins now gave us a scale that we can quantify it instead of just saying it has a vibrational level. He gave us a scale and he puts a numerical number to it. Now, folks can, some folks are critical thinkers. They want to try to get into, well, what does he get these numbers from? And why these numbers are important? And to me, the folks who are thinking that, I say this: what goal do you have of trying to disprove his model? Is that going to make you better? Do you have a better way? You're going to come up with a higher, or are you just doing that for ego? And that means you're vibrating at a lower level. So it's not about trying to prove David Hawkins wrong, but how do I interpret this information and this data to make my life better and put me on the road to become more fully human? And what I want to say in relation to that as well, just quickly, since I started January, I've really been focused on what I feed my mind. And as I said before, just intentionally watching what I select within my algorithm on YouTube. Mainly, that's one of my main social media sites. Not really Facebook as much, but definitely YouTube. And we all know that if you don't intentionally choose what you watch, the algorithm would tell you based on selections you watched before. And I would let people send me videos that not necessarily vibrated where I'm vibrating, but that's where they are. They're friends of mine. I watch that video. And then YouTube would give me several other suggestions based off their video they sent me, which I told myself this year I wasn't taking with me. I don't want to see more renditions of what they're thinking of. So all that said, I decided to make my videos that my algorithm train it so that I only want to see things that are about spiritual enlightenment, personal development, growth, kindness. I only want to get videos like that. And as a result, it gives me great videos. I love the algorithm because I've seen so many videos I would never have seen from folks I hadn't heard before and probably wouldn't have found out about them without the algorithm turning me on to them. And it's just really been working great. But here's the other thing it's done for me as well in purpose of our context, a context of our conversation. What it does is it because I watch that and then I also meditate at night and I feed my subconscious mind with that information, my thoughts now are elevated and vibrating at different frequencies. I feel different. And I share this with you. Now, still operate about 5 hours of sleep. I can't get to the point where I can get more than 5 hours of sleep. Never have, never could. So that's just been something I've been living with my entire life. But typically, if I went to an all day event, which I did yesterday for 8 hours, and I'm in a passive learning mode, it's very difficult to stay awake. And I went to bed at 11, got up at 4, and was up writing before I went to the event. So I just felt that I was going to be, my old me would have been struggling just to get through the day and been, probably wouldn't stay the entire day either. But I didn't doze off not one time. So the energy I have now claimed back, and that's nothing I want to add to this. I've reclaimed my energy because I no longer allow myself to live within a racial construct. And what I believe the racial construct is living within your race, defining your identity by your race, and seeing the world through that lens. I believe that's a 50% energy drain from all can scale that adds to that because of the arbitrage and the weight of viewing everything through a racial construct that doesn't even exist. And so I say that to say this point. I went to this event yesterday. It was called the Campaign for Humanity. So interesting enough, you send me today's topic about Carol Gilligan's care. So again, I'm talking about love, vibrating. I go to this event, Campaign for Humanity. Your topic today is about care. See, this is all because I'm vibrating at this level and I'm attracting these type of topics, these type of events, these type of conversations and to me. And then I'm at the same time, the seed is implanted and instilled in me enough to recognize what that means. Like you first, when I first met, you would explain to me David Hawkins and things of that nature. And intellectually, I understood it, but I didn't put it into action. I didn't apply it. I just had it there, said I understand it, and just moved on. But when I began to really apply it, it's not just an understanding that comes, it's a knowing of really seeing how the universe works. And I want to really conclude this section by saying this so folks can relate to it. Did you ever see the movie The Matrix?
Yeah.
Well, to me, the movie The Matrix is great. And people always use it for all the symbolism and things. But one of the things in The Matrix that was really profound was the guy when Neo first got to the ship and they put him out of the Matrix. And he was sitting there watching the computer screen with one of the pilots of the ship. And he asked him, he said, "Do you see that computer screen? You see the woman in the red dress?" And Neil said, "Yes, I see the woman in the red dress." And everybody was big on that story, that comparison. The guy says, "Well, I don't really see the woman. All I see is ones and zeros, the data behind it." And what I'm saying that is that's what I see now. Once you remove the racial construct and you remove bias from your thinking and your how you see people, you no longer see black, white, male, female, Jewish, Muslim, and all these other divisive terms we put on ourselves to describe ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with those descriptions as long as you use them as descriptions. I'm just saying when it's your identity, when you identify within that description, that's what causes divisiveness. And when you are thinking through that lens, then that's all you see. And for me, I see the data, the bits, and I'm able to look at things from a total unbiased perspective. Not to say I'm fully human, I've arrived there, but I'm there. I can still get triggered. I'm not perfect. I still can get triggered because the racial construct is deep in my DNA. It's in my very soul because of how I was raised and what I experienced and what I've seen. So of course I can get triggered and my frequency vibration drops down, but I'm now have the spiritual awareness to see that, catch it, and then do something to improve it and to raise it back up.
Yeah, no, I love that. So much to so many directions to go in here. I wanted to look at um, the very bottom line of this page, where it says all levels below 500 are objective, content biased, and all levels are above 500 are subjective or context biased. And I think that's really important. Um, Virtually every developmental model that I've seen, the models on which we base the shorthand, me, us, all that is, basically agree with that. I mean, just one that comes to mind is Terry O'Fallon's stages model. And that's probably the most recent model that's out there. Some of them are, some decades old. Hers is really a 21st century model. She's been doing research for years, but and she has basically, I'm not going to get into what her model is, but there are 3 levels, each of which has 4 stages within it. And her first level is the concrete level, and that's the world of the objects and the content bias. So her first 4 stages are objective or concrete. And the funny people in the research studies, if people aren't sure what you mean by concrete or objective, they basically say, well, if you can bump into it, all right, and it's solid, then it's concrete or objective. And that's really true. It's the concrete world. It's the microphone. It's my microphone. Here's my microphone. It's the it's the book I'm holding in my hand. It's all of that. That's the concrete objective world. The next move up, which Hawkins referred to as subjective, is the abstract world. Those are the things you can't really touch or bump into, but you trust that they're true or that they're real. Thoughts, emotions, that's abstract. And then in Terry O'Fallon's model, the last 4 stages are in a category that's called meta-aware. So it goes from concrete aware to abstract aware to meta-aware. And meta-aware means you're aware of your own awareness. And based on this model, now I'm going to go out on a limb here, meta-awareness is probably the top 3 levels, the kind of lavender levels there, vibrating at 540 hertz or higher. It could be 500, but the meta-awareness pretty much would be above the 540. So I just wanted to point to the consistency here that all of us and all the models go from what's concrete to what's abstract to what's kind of aware of awareness. I don't know any models that don't do that at some level. So, and if that sounded like incoherent ramblings, people should just ignore that. It's not necessary. But for me, it's reassuring that all these people studying different things in a way are bumping into or finding very similar trajectories in terms of how we humans develop.
I agree. And I'm actually doing my own studying and realizing and coming up with, again, for me, being the background of the system engineering, it's trained me to think in frameworks. I can't now. For me, I have to put everything in frameworks for me to understand it. And in doing so, to your point about, I came up with a framework. Again, this is not something I created. Of course, I'm influenced by others, the writings that I'm reading, but the way I internalized it and then I put it in my writings and now my podcast is that there's 3 tiers to human emergence. And it may be more, but I'm saying this growth level right now, this is what I came up with, to your point. Tier number 1, it starts off as the life experiencer. You pretty much just experiencing life. You at that level, and you haven't really found your identity yet. You're just experiencing life, and as the young people now say, life is living for you, right? Then stage two is the seeker. And this is the person who now says, I'm looking for my identity. I'm looking for a purpose. I'm open to reading. And that's the next material continuum that you can grow to. Not that you have to. Some people never get from experiencer. Then some people get the seeker. And when they're at that seeker level, they're looking for the identity. They may even find their identity to hold on to. But the problem is, because again, the vibration is low, their identity is going to be centered on what's been fed to them by the construct, and as you say, your cultural givens. So your identity is going to sit around their race, it's going to sit around their religion, their, some people may even escape that a little bit to the point, but then it becomes their careers, their identity. I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm an athlete, and they start putting that title in their name and their description as though that defines who they are, as opposed to just understand that's just a role that they're playing in any given moment in life. Doesn't find their totality. That's just a role you put on, like a costume that you put on. And so the next tier from seeker is when you get to be what I call co-creator. And that's when you tap into the energy, and you talk about the lavender tier. That's when you realize that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, and that you are actually can co-create, not the creator, but you can co-create with the love energy yourself and manifest things in your life. And you're vibrating there, and now your thoughts are intentional about love, creation, and that's when you're in line and with the universe in that perspective. And I don't believe most people get there, because to get there, I think you have to do what monks do. You remove yourself from society altogether. You only read what you consume, the books. You remove yourself from all the low vibration. And that's why the monks and the nuns and everybody, when they really want to get closer to God, and for those folks who are in that thought process, regardless of the dogma they study, it's because you see the first thing they do is remove themselves from the masses, and they remove themselves from the noise and the construct or whatever the system that it's operating, govern our lives. They take themselves off that grid completely, because they know you cannot, and I don't have the facts to say it, but I don't believe, and they believe as well, that you can achieve that level, as you talked about, the higher lavender tiers from within society and still functioning as an everyday person. I think that the barriers to that is too difficult to break through if you're falling within the construct.
Yeah, I mean, so actually, there's models for that. There's the most recent one that I can think of, who died in, I think, 2022, was Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk. I won't say a lot about his whole history, but he was a monk. He had his own monastery, which people came to study with him. And even this was true centuries ago with the Christian Desert Fathers, and with many Buddhist practitioners who were operating on a high level. They would go to the monastery, whether it was in the forest somewhere, on a mountaintop, or wherever they were. They would do their practice, and then the move was they'd go back down into the city or the town, and they would share, they would teach. And when they needed to be, this is my language now, when they needed to get recharged, they'd go back to the monastery. They would recharge for, a few months or sometimes a few years, then go back. So it was this back and forth. To your point, they couldn't do it day to day in the city or the town or on the farm or wherever it happened to be. That was too hard. But the most telling, and I forget who said this, it was a Buddhist practitioner. I don't know if it was Thich Nhat Hanh or not. He basically said, we get a lot of respect at the monastery because of the sacrifices we make. But the people that we have the most respect for are the people who are, I think you used the term landowners, but not in the terms of the wealthy people, but those who get up every day, go to work, and raise their kids, and they're still trying to practice. So they're doing this work, as you say, in the construct. in the infrastructure, the logistics that make it really hard to do the work. So the monks have a lot of respect for those practitioners as well. But it's a lot, and they say it's harder to do the work, you know, if you don't go to the monastery every couple of years. So that, I mean, I'm basically agreeing with you, but there are some people wiser than me who have spoken to that very point. You got to take the time to do your practice, then you can share yourself with the world. Practice, share yourself with the world. It's really hard to do them simultaneously. Not impossible. And Thich Nhat Hanh is my favorite example in the 21st century, but he began protesting the Vietnam War against North Vietnam, against South Vietnam, and against the United States. So he protested the war. He didn't take a side. And for that, he was banned from Vietnam for close to 40 years. He couldn't go home. Anyway, so he was definitely up in that lavender color there. I don't know where he was exactly all the time, but he was up there.
And see, we meet people like that through our history and lives. I liken it to Muhammad Ali choosing not to fight in the Vietnam War, and understanding what that meant. I mean, see, a lot of people, I don't think take that into consideration. You're the champion of the world. You've achieved the highest goal. You've practiced your whole life. You've been committed. And now you want to give that up when you've achieved it because of your principle. When all you have to do is go to war and you don't even have to fight. You just go there, shake hands, and be a celebrity. That's what they're telling him. And he still said, no, you're not going to leverage me, and I won't devalue my principles. And so and that's the funny thing about human nature, is that we idolize these people and lift them up and worship them more so than follow them. And I think the same thing we've done. A lot of people who claim to be Christians do the same thing with Jesus. They put Jesus at a point where we can worship him, but we're not going to try to behave like him, because that becomes too difficult. That means you take control over your life, and now folks don't want to deal with that. Yeah. Or whether it's, again, Allah with Muhammad in the Islamic faith, whatever the case may be, whoever that deity is that we admire, that stood on principle. My goal is, at this stage of my life, I want to start moving in that direction and put myself towards that. And I think that the first step to do that is you got to become more kind and look for ways to give kindness. And if you start to do that, I think that more ways to become kind will come back to you. And I'm experienced that just shortly. Like I said, I went to the conference yesterday. Again, the conference for humanity, for creating humanity, expanding humanity. And the interesting thing about it, it was a diverse group, but mostly Blacks, mostly older. I was definitely the junior for the first time in a while. I'm not used to being the youngest person in the room. But it's about 70 people there, very connected, a lot of county officials. So they had a diverse group of influencers, even though majority of people, again, were in their mid-60s, late 60s, and so on and so forth, but connected and powerful people nonetheless, talking about how they can be more human. And it was interesting. The guy showed a video just real quick. The guy who held the conference, his name is AJ Ally. He was the event host. He showed a movie called Walking While Black. And initially, when I got the invitation to go to the conference, I was like, why would I want to go see that? I don't want to put that in my spirit because I know it would trigger me. But a person of influence sent it to me, and I said, let me go because they sent it. So something there. So I went there and changed my mind, changed my life. So anyway, long story short, where I'm going with this is the goal of it was he was walking black in Howard County and got pulled over by the police. And that affected him psychologically at a level because he's not doing anything wrong. That's injustice. Why are you pulling me over? I mean, you had no business even stopping me. And so justice was definitely not served. So instead of him just fighting that with anger and being at the anger level and then having shame and guilt vibrating those lower frequencies, he shifted the situation and said he went to Hawaii, went to a ceremony, forgetting all the details about that, but it was a ceremony spiritually that saw him and taught him that he should deal with it through love. So he had to reclaim a different identity now, and he's centered on finding love. So he created the movie, shows the problem and the issues and the systematic things that people have to deal with. But then he shows the solution that he's advocating is now we give love. And as a result of him choosing love, he came back, created a training around that. Then the late great Elijah Cummings introduced him and connected him with the police department that had stopped him. And they took his training video and made it training. It was the first police department in the nation to accept his training as their training to help officers. So he turned into something very positive and meaningful by vibrating at a higher frequency is where I'm going with this. And that was just, to me, wonderful to see that, see somebody who was living that life, not talking about it theoretically, not just writing about it, but putting his actions what his words are, and then taking that next step and involving people in it. And so now he takes walks with police. He has a goal to say 50, he's going to walk 50 times with different police officers, departments around the United States with the community, because he wants to build that bridge now and heal those wounds, as we talk about healing America's narratives. He wants to do that and change the demographic and the culture from the Black and community and police being adversaries. So that just, to me, was just a powerful expression of everything we're talking about.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Appreciate your sharing that story. And you said Howard County. Is that Baltimore?
It's not. It's south of Baltimore, so it's a suburb of Baltimore City.
Okay.
So yeah, I share that only to say, as we now getting ready to shift into our next end of our program, that I think that you laid the foundation through these last 3 years or 4 years that we've been doing these podcasts. Went from becoming more fully human, the fully human connections, to now emerging to healing America's narratives. What you've been doing is just planting seeds in me and hopefully people who listen and then is really open to connect and accept this information about how to be a better human. And at every stage, I thought I was being better along the journey. And then I learned more that how much I didn't know and how much I wasn't being better. So I just, again, want to thank you for that before we close our section. So I know I've kind of done two, giving people their flowers before we got to that section, but I just wanted to say that because that was on my mind and my heart as well.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'm pretty much in that same boat. I mean, every time I think I figure something out, you get a new lesson at a higher frequency. It's like, oh, there's more. So it doesn't right. Stop. You know, if you're sincere, it doesn't stop, which is good. Yeah, something to do when you get up in the morning.
Absolutely. So yeah, you want to give us a close out on how we should move forward?
Yeah, I mean, so for this idea of caring, you know, it's a practice in a given moment. If you, especially, but not only, if you find yourself in a moment of anxiety or fear, or or grief, or anger, whatever it happens to be, ask yourself, how could I care in this moment? What would be one thing I could do to care for myself or for another living being in this moment, and then do that thing. And you can feel the difference. I mean, you don't have to understand what a hertz is. You don't have to understand vibrational frequency. I mean, it's fine if you do, but you can feel the difference, right? You'll feel it in your body. You may feel it as a sense of clarity or relaxation as well. I don't want to get into trying to describe what it feels like because that would be limiting. But how could I care in this moment and then do that thing? And you can feel the difference. So I would just, it's that simple, but it has to be a practice. You do that once, you say, wow, that really worked. That was cool. And not do it again for the next 50 years, good luck. It's got to be practice.
It's interesting you say you got to be practice. I think that's key. I shouldn't say that's interesting. That's key. That's critical. Your rituals are going to determine your overall success and growth. If you don't get some rituals established with that, then it won't you won't see the impact. And I've learned about that, and I've seen the difference. So I agree wholeheartedly. So thank you for sharing that. Now, as we wrap up our show, we ended by lifting up someone who we look at as exhibiting even past fully human behaviors. Now we got the map of consciousness stuff. We'll say vibrating the energy of love. Folks who have done that, not their whole lives, but in certain parts, and they had the impact of others, felt that, uh, whether in the past or in the present. And so the person I want to lift up today is, again, the gentleman by the name of AJ Ali, who hosted the event yesterday. Uh, just from the fact that he created from pain, he turned pain into love and a plan by how he viewed the situation, how he dealt with the cops. Because he, as a black man, with all the emotions you're going to have about police pulling you over, and it's a whole thing, as they really can't be described. That I don't think anybody other than a black man could understand truly what it feels like to have that energy with the police, that somebody that has that much power, guns, and can take your life over you, and you have to navigate a world where that's constantly a threat for you. So anyway, for him to go through what he went through instead of doubling down, which is what your culture givens would tell you to do, and your community and the media, to be angry about it and now turn it into another angry piece to come at them, and it just gets lost in the sauce because it happens so much that it'll just be another one of those instances that would just go away in the 3 or 4 months. He turned it into something that's going to be a movement that's going to be ongoing and life changing. It's based on love. And so instead of him having hatred, he turned to love, and now he has a relationship with that police department. That's incredible, and that's what shows power. Going back up to um, David Hawkins' scale here, you see power is what you have when you start operating at those and vibrating at those frequencies, and it's not negative power, but power that can make things, that can bring about change, that impact so many people's lives, and everybody wants to be a part of it, and everybody wants to be a part sharing that story. So for him, he's my person I want to lift up today as being fully human.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that whole story that you told about the event yesterday. So I'm gonna go with a guy that, I don't know a lot about him, but everything I've heard him say, I like and respect, and he's in a tough spot now, and I think he's doing a good job with it. Is the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who he comes from a high level financial background. I forget what his work was right before he was became prime minister. But he has to navigate the terrain of you know being an ally to Denmark and Norway and in NATO, dealing with Trump's first saying we're going to make you the 51st state, and then saying we're going to invade Canada. All that kind of stupid shit that Trump continues to do, and to be able to stand up and be honest and talk about the importance of the allies, that not including America anymore, because America is not acting as an ally, and doing it in a way that doesn't intentionally further antagonize Trump, is a real skill level and awareness level that I respect, because Trump can do a lot of damage to a lot of people in a lot of countries, because of the apparent power of the office of the presidency of the United States. So this guy Mark Carney, I think, deserves a lot of credit. I'll hold him up as a fully human. If not being fully human, he's definitely a fully human candidate.
All right. I gotta learn more about him. If you lifting him up, and that's the great thing about doing this podcast with you on a weekly basis, because I get information I normally wouldn't get. So if you lifting him up, I'll look into him, and because I honor and respect you and what you've shown and what you demonstrated as being a fully human. And that's a power, as I wrap up our show, that's a power of this community, is that when you start seeing people exhibit fully human characteristics and you're around those individuals, you have a different life, folks. And that's what we want to hopefully get you all to see, and then show you all through our actions as well. So every Wednesday at 10 a.m., the Healing America's Narrative podcast, Hope to see you there. Until then, let's everybody continue to keep finding ways to become more fully human. Thank you.